It's easy to forget when simply enjoying a video game that actually, video games are such complex achievements of creativity, art, and technical mastery that it's astonishing that they get made at all. Even Shaq Fu. As such, there are loads of beloved video games that very nearly didn't make it to shop shelves on account of various weird reasons that cropped up during development. Weird reasons such as the 7 I'm going to tell you about in this video. Enjoy!
I never quite realized how beautiful this world is.
The commander's put me in charge of your maintenance, ma'am. That means I'll be performing regular checks on you from now on.
2017's Nier Automata, the game that launched 1,000 cosplays, is considered a masterpiece of the action RPG genre, but it almost got cancelled because its director hates waking up in the morning. Yoko Taro, the director of Nier Automata, is something of an eccentric, as you can probably tell from the fact that he wears this terrifying mask whenever he goes out in public. However, his distaste for getting out of bed in the morning almost led to the game being cancelled by the early birds at its development studio Platinum Games. According to Taro in an interview with US Gamer, Platinum Games' start of the workday is at 9:30 AM, and as a freelancer, I can't wake up that early. So we actually had one month where we were constantly arguing about it, and Nier Automata actually was about to be cancelled because their start time was so early for me. And that's actually not a joke. Yes, when given the impossible and inhuman task of arriving at work at 9:30 AM, Yoko Taro decided that it would probably be best if they just cancelled the project so he could get his 40 winks. However, luckily for Taro and for us, the good game-enjoying public, a policy change at Platinum meant that they switched over to a rolling schedule where people could come in whenever they liked, as long as they did their contracted hours. So Taro started rocking up at midday or whenever, and the project was saved. To be fair, the sleep is clearly doing him good. Dude looks fantastic. The original Pokemon games, Pokemon Red and Blue, known as Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, were the spark that ignited the worldwide Pokemon craze that still shows no signs of slowing down over 25 years later. However, according to an interview with Junichi Masuda of Pokemon developer Game Freak, we almost didn't get the original Pokemon games because the computers the team were working on kept overheating and breaking, to the point where work had to stop on the games while the computers were fixed. I remember my computers always overheating and breaking down on me, said Masuda in the interview. I would work hard to fix them, and eventually we managed to complete the first Pokemon games, but I think I went through 3 or 4 computers by the end. I sure am glad I fixed those computers back then. If I hadn't, the original Red and Green games might never have come out. That's a scary thought. Indeed it is, although looking at Pokemon Red, you can see why it required so much processing horsepower that it was melting everyone's computers. Basically the crisis of 1996 right here. No Man's Sky may have gone through some issues at launch, but that's kind of to be expected when a tiny indie studio goes from making a game about a funny man on a motorbike called Joe Danger to making a game that promised an entire universe with 18 quintillion planets called No Man's Sky. Still, new features kept getting added after launch, and No Man's Sky is now in a place where it is regarded fondly by a great deal of players, if not necessarily at the point where it's delivered everything developer Hello Games said it would pre-launch. However, we very nearly didn't get even that thanks to a natural disaster which befell the developers during No Man's Sky's development. On Christmas Eve 2013, a river near Hello Games Studio burst its banks, and the resulting flood destroyed almost everything in the office, including computers, hard drives, and apparently a life-size cardboard cutout of Joe Danger. According to studio head Sean Murray, it was at this point that they considered just canning the game rather than having to redo the months and months of work that they'd lost. It was only the fact that they'd already announced it at the Game Awards the previous month that stopped them from doing so. As Murray said in a chat with IGN Unfiltered, I think if we hadn't announced the game, I nearly backed out of it. I think if we had backed out of it and then had been flooded, it's hard to know. I think we might have canned No Man's Sky, because we would have been feeling really unsure of it. When we were trying to back out of it, we were like, what have we been doing? On the contrary, however, the flooding apparently gave the studio a renewed focus in working on the game, presumably so Joe Danger's drowning death wasn't in vain. R.I.P., big man. Star Fox 2 is a curious entry in this list as it actually was cancelled, and then later uncancelled a whole 22 years after it was completed. The original Star Fox was a groundbreaking 3D aerial combat game on the Super Nintendo, and its sequel sought to carry on that legacy with an upgraded cartridge that provided even more processing power for the best 3D game ever seen on 16-bit hardware. Unfortunately, this was in 1995, with the PlayStation newly released and the N64 on the imminent horizon, both of which were considerably more powerful than the SNES and capable of doing much more impressive 3D games. As a result, even though it was 95% complete at the time, Nintendo chose to cancel Star Fox 2 because they felt it would be directly compared against games such as Ridge Racer, a comparison it was never going to win, despite one being about cars and one being about foxes who can fly spaceships. However, Star Fox 2 did eventually see the light of day 22 years later, bundled with the SNES Mini in 2017, when people had stopped caring about graphics, or at least had stopped caring about them if it meant they got to play the mythical sequel to a beloved game from their childhoods.
And the never-before-released Star Fox 2.
In your face, Ridge Racer.
The island you once knew has flipped.
Fortnite is one of the most successful games in the world, with over 250 million registered players, and has generated over $2.5 billion worth of revenue since 2018. It also came perilously close to being cancelled before it came out, due to it being a completely different game to the one we know today. According to a Game Informer interview with Rod Ferguson, former production lead at Epic Games, Ferguson tried to cancel Fortnite due to a host of problems that were causing development to overrun and become expensive, such as switching engines and developing a new, cartoonier art style. To be fair, Fortnite had been in development since 2011, and at the point of nearly being canned, was still Fortnite Save the World, the original base-building game mode in which players have to survive against waves of zombies.
When monsters do take a bite out of your defenses, you can repair and reinforce them during the heat of battle. Keep an eye out for weak spots, because the enemy sees them too.
This mode still exists, but it was the much more popular Battle Royale mode, which was added soon after the game went into early access, which made Fortnite into the global phenomenon it is today. Luckily for Fortnite, Ferguson left Epic Games for Irrational Games, where he was tasked with getting BioShock Infinite out the door, and so Fortnite escaped the chopping block, but it sounded like a close-run thing. As Ferguson said in the interview, "If I stayed at Epic, I would have cancelled Fortnite. Before I left, I tried to cancel Fortnite. Fortnite, when it was Save the World, that was a project that had some challenges. As a director of production at that time, that game wasn't something that would have passed my bar to keep going. Therefore, Ferguson's departure meant we got Fortnite and BioShock Infinite. So I guess things worked out for the best." From the sounds of it, it's a miracle that the most famous James Bond video game of them all, Goldeneye 007 for the N64, turned out the way it did. When it was first pitched, Goldeneye was envisioned as a side-scrolling shooter game in the style of developer Rare's other big game at the time, Donkey Kong Country. Imagine that ape is in a tuxedo, and you're on the right lines. The idea then switched to a shooter game for the N64, but crucially, an on-rails shooter. As such, for its first months of development, Goldeneye was shaping up to be the kind of game that featured no player movement at all. It's hard to imagine, but this footage, confirmed by Goldeneye designer David Doak to be an early demo of the game, gives you some idea of what could have been. Worst of all though, the game was in such a state during the closing stages of development and had suffered such significant delays that Nintendo actually wrote to Rare telling them to cancel the project. Rare's Mark Betteridge got around this obstacle by just not telling the team and letting them finish up, convinced that the final product would be good enough to make Nintendo change their minds. Luckily it was, and Donkey Kong didn't have to put on an uncomfortable tuxedo, so everyone's a winner. And speaking of Donkey Kong, the Donkey Kong arcade game managed to do a lot. It introduced Donkey Kong and Mario, and gave us all a glimpse into the cutthroat world of skyscraper construction. More giant apes than you'd expect. Of course, Donkey Kong's lasting legacy is that it established the almighty Mario video game universe, which makes it all the more terrifying how close this great game came to not doing that. Because if Nintendo's plans had worked out, Donkey Kong would have been about Popeye, the cartoon sailor and performance-enhancing vegetable enthusiast, whose popularity peaked somewhere around the late 1930s.
I saw my duty and done it, 'cause I'm Popeye the Sailor Man.
It was around the character of Popeye, as well as Popeye's love interest Olive Oil and brawny nemesis Bluto, that Nintendo linchpin Shigeru Miyamoto designed the game that would end up being Donkey Kong, and the project was approved, but discussions to get the Popeye license from owner King Features stalled, so Miyamoto and Nintendo scrambled to repurpose the planned game with new characters, and the rest, thank God, is history. But it sounds like we came this close to not getting Donkey Kong, and out there somewhere is a Butterfly Effect universe where we're all looking forward to Super Popeye Odyssey 2 on the Switch. Doesn't bear thinking about. So those were 7 great games that in various alternate universes we never got to play on account of these weird reasons. Which are you most glad made it through? Are you from the alternate universe where Fortnite never happened? Let us know what it's like there. Also, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified anytime we upload a video like this one. Thanks for watching.